the song in itself, it's not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things have been. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. No one can pour. All I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for the song in itself, it's not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things have been. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made. But it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm so certain you're here with me. You stay the same. Your love remains here in my heart, so close I believe. You're holding me now in your hands. I belong, never let me go. So close I believe. Holding me now in your hands. I belong, never let me go. You gave your life, your endless love. You set me free and showed the way. Now I am found, so close I believe. Holding me now in your hands. I belong, never let me go. So close I believe. Holding me now in your hands. I belong, never let me go. All alone.
Good morning. I just want to spend a moment to address Wednesday night's meeting. I can't imagine how difficult that was for you guys to make that decision. And I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I had to come to this. Sorry I couldn't hang out longer. Sorry I couldn't be here with you that night. And I was struggling with making this decision to resign probably for about a year now. And one of the things that kept me so long and not doing it was because of this fear that the church would close. And what some of you were asking me what my reaction was, and when I found out I was driving, I just pulled over and came home, and Stephanie and I wept together. And I'm sure you guys were weeping here as well. But I also want to say that I'm proud of you, because I know how hard of a decision that was. And most of the time when those decisions are made, they're not made without division. And you guys did it together. You made the decision, you made the hard decision to do it together. And you stood together in the midst of it. And you should be proud of yourself. Terry Smith told me that you guys handled yourself very, very well. And so I'm proud of you guys in that regard. So obviously we won't be having the annual meeting anymore. I did, on Tuesday night, I put it together because I had no idea what the result was going to be. If you want to read my last report to you guys, it's out on the table on the side there. And then our last Sunday here, what we're going to do is it'll probably be a little bit longer than our typical Journey Sundays. If there are any songs that you really enjoy, that you've enjoyed over the years, that the Journey band has played for worship, please let Dion know so we can make sure that those songs are played. We'll do some of that. There'll be a time of sharing. So if, over the next couple of weeks, if there's something that you want to share to the congregation of what this church has meant to you, or something that you just need to get off your chest, the things that you'll miss, we'll do that together. And we're also going to, like on Christmas, where we had a babysitter come in to take care of the kids, we're going to look into that again so that everybody can be part of the service as much as possible. If you have older kids, we won't have Junior Journey, they can stay in the congregation, but for the younger kids, we'll look into hiring somebody again. So that's it, basically. Just bear with some of the wording and the terminology of this message today, because I prepared this message in the beginning of December, not knowing, what the end result was going to be in the decisions. I knew, obviously, this was a very likely option that was going to be decided, but whenever you see wording like "may the journey always be a place," just kind of change that in your hearts to the intent of the series all along was to say, okay, no matter what the future holds for this place and these people, no matter where we go, whether we're still gathering here together, that what we have here is a story that needs to be told. And it's a story that is non-existent in a lot of circles. And it's a story that can be carried on. And so, although we're closing this building, and we're closing the end of this congregation, we're closing the end of the story, we're writing the end of the novel. Many churches don't choose to do that themselves. They just let it happen to them. So you chose to write the end of your story. Just know that this is something that can carry on for you, and will carry on. And so that's the heart of this series is really about that. So the first thing I want to focus in on is redemption. One of the things that I've seen in this church over the several years is the journey is a place where no one is beyond redemption. Because all of us are acutely aware of our own shortcomings. One of the things I really appreciate about you as a congregation is that you give opportunity for people to experience the grace of God through allowing themselves to be them. And it's not that authenticity is an end to itself. It's more of the idea that when people experienced Jesus on earth, when he was walking among people, he allowed them to be themselves in order for them to be transformed. And part of that, in order for that to happen, we have to have an honest assessment of our own lives and say, we don't have it all together. Like, where we go into spiritual danger is when we think that we've arrived in some capacity. And that spirit has always been here. That nobody is beyond redemption. That people are allowed space to be themselves, allowed space to fail. And we learn from those mistakes and we move forward. Now, the hard part of that is the risk-reward aspect of it. And the hard part of that is that we are designed as human beings to be wired by risk-reward behavior. It's just how we are. So some of us may be more risky than others, might enter into risky decisions or be more comfortable in making steps and leaps of faith, and others of us are really conservative and really cautious. And so we might have struggles in that area. But every human being is designed by risk and reward. And those are the questions that we ask in our relationships. Like, how much am I willing to risk when somebody comes and hurts me or wounds me? How long am I going to extend them grace? And, we look at Jesus telling Peter that, he has to, we look at Jesus telling Peter that he has to forgive 70 times 7. And we look at that, and the spirit of that is that we're always trying to forgive and extend that grace to other people. But the hard part is that wiring that we have, risk and reward. And here's the thing about grace. There is no safe grace. There is no way that you can extend grace to another human being and have it be safe. Because inherently in the aspect of grace is this vulnerability that you're releasing yourself in order to forgive or provide mercy for another human being. So essentially, there is going to be a time when somebody takes advantage of that grace. There have been times in our community here where people take advantage of that grace. And the question is do we still believe in grace enough that it's powerful enough to transform lives? Because here's what I've experienced in my time of grace, and being a pastor here. Most of the time, grace, the majority of the time, I think grace is something that transforms people, and people take it in and are transformed, and their behaviors change by it. But you always have people that will take advantage of grace in your life. You always will. And the hard part about being human is that the minority of that time feels like the majority. Because once you're wounded and you're taken advantage of, you project that onto your entire experience. It's just natural risk and reward behavior. You're designed to protect yourself and survival of the fittest type of feeling as human beings. So one of the things I encourage us to do, no matter where you go from here, if it's another church, if you need time to be away from church for a while, I know we're all in different places. Don't lose sight of the grace that you experienced here. Because the grace you experienced here, somebody else needs that. Somebody else needs that culture that's not built somewhere else. That could be in your family, that could be in your neighborhood, that could be in your job, it could be with your friends. But cultivate that, because it's something that is so powerful that you've experienced here that doesn't have an end. It's a story that moves forward, not moves back. And the fruit of redemption is born through the magnanimous patience that people continuously extend to one another. Another thing that I've really felt about this congregation is that this is a very patient group of people. You're really patient with people. I think that's why many people that struggle with mental illness have felt so at home here. Because in order to minister to people that struggle with mental illness, you need a lot of patience. And people are very patient with one another here. And that's something that I've found is sometimes not in large demand. And not just in churches, like working at my job, I can see that there is very little patience among some people. People don't have the same level of patience forbearance, I should say, that maybe we could. They get very frustrated very quickly, and the blame game happens. And I can even see, just seeing it from a management mindset, I see how managers sometimes have to hold themselves together and be patient towards this person in order for productivity to continue. In a world that isn't patient, we have the opportunity to be patient. And we look at God's faithfulness, and I think the reason God is faithful is it's integrated with his patience. If you look at the story of Israel throughout the Old Testament, we read that in a vacuum, in a sense, because we jump into layers of the story, whatever has been recorded. We don't get the entire history of their people. So we're jumping into these moments that God is interacting with these people. But in between, let's say, these moments of judgment and these moments of where God disciplines his people are hundreds and hundreds of years where God was patient with his people up until this point. So we forget, we lose that when we jump in and we just see the discipline or the judgment. But he was patient through this whole time. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about this community of faith is patience. And maybe it's because we've had to fight for everything for 2 decades. Maybe that's why. And the amount of fortitude and the amount of resilience that you have and you've had over the years is truly remarkable. Because here's the thing, we live in a consumer culture. We live in a culture where you jump to church to church to church to find the best programs, to find the best people. It's so hard to find people that stay for years and years and years and years. Some of you have been here since the early 90s. You've been through a lot of church changes. This wasn't always the journey. This wasn't always turned sideways with tables and tattoo parties. And you stayed through that stuff where a crazy young pastor said, hey, let's have a tattoo party in this church, not knowing what would happen. Not everybody agreed with it, right? But you stayed because you believed that God was doing something here, and you believed in the people here. And I hope, one of the things I wrote in my report, that you see that it was worth it. Because I'll never, ever think that it wasn't worth it. Ever think that. You guys are so worth it. I'll always carry you in my heart. And I always carry the burden that, maybe I could have carried it longer. May the journey always be a place where our faith isn't self-absorbed, but deeply cares about the redemption of others. When I became a pastor here in 2006, it was a few years out of college, and my faith journey was just changing dramatically, probably around the time that I was graduating PBU, but more so within the years subsequent. My wife always jokes with me that you're always changing all the time. Like I can never get a grip on you. But I'm always evaluating, analyzing things. I always want to know what the truth is. I always want to know that I'm doing it the right way, that I'm seeing the world accurately, that I'm not allowing my biases to filter things. And I began to see that my world and the way that I viewed church was very built upon the culture that I grew up in. It didn't have any seedlings of me. I was very much the typical, cookie-cutter, white, evangelical, Protestant young man. Believed everything, hook, line, and sinker, that they threw at me. But when I began to study the New Testament, and I began, I want to be a pastor, I want my church to reflect the New Testament. I saw the early church, they were all about people that they haven't reached before. They weren't just about each other. They were about each other because they shared their possessions with each other. They helped each other. Another thing that I've always thought was strong here is how much we've served one another. But never be isolated to just be insular. It's all about ourselves. And so one of the things I want to do is just hit the ground running and do some things to reach out in the community. So the very first month that I became a pastor, we went out and served coffee to people at the train stations in Levittown and Pendel. And it was a very short-lived ministry because SEPTA shut us down. But I just remember how quickly, you got, people, not a lot of you are still here, helped out with that, but some of you are. How quickly you came behind me to do it. And honestly, I was afraid nobody would be out in the train station for me. Who wants to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Friday and go talk to strangers? I mean, a lot of us were still introverted. We had a little bit more of a mixture back then, but you guys came behind it. Your desire was always, let's try this. Let's see if it works. Let's go out and reach into the community. And may that always be part of your heartbeat. And maybe, wherever you go from here, maybe there's a culture that doesn't exist. Maybe you can create that culture somewhere. That needs to be culture. But we always said that we never want to be a people where we just attract people that are like us. That these are these people and these are us. But we want to reach out and find people that need God, that need to experience healing, that need to experience grace. The other thing is that maybe never leave behind the grace we experience for momentary experiences of self-fulfillment. The temptation in all of our spirituality is to forget how grace transforms and to kind of hold up with it in a sense and hold on to it. And the truth is that we can seek momentary self-fulfillment in our spirituality too. I mean, we're very attracted to things that just feed us. And we know from being in a church this small that we weren't afforded that opportunity a lot of times. A lot of you gave of yourself to the nth degree when you weren't getting filled in some areas at all because you just had to pour out and pour out and pour out. And I rarely ever think, I don't know of anybody who goes through long periods of happiness. I've never met a human being that goes through long periods of happiness. I know that's kind of abstract, what does long periods of happiness mean, but I think the reality is that we face something at least once a week that throws us off, kilter a little bit. It might not be devastating or anything like that, but we have to struggle with, I'm just not happy with this reality. Or you might struggle with loneliness, or you might struggle with depression. But here's the thing for everyone in this room, there's a next season coming, and we don't know, for all of you, you don't know what that season's going to look like. But it is next season. And what was built here for you will carry you through that season. And will give you the strength and the fortitude because you saw what God can do even in sometimes the most bleakest of situations here. I mean, this isn't the first time, this could have happened several years ago. We could have closed several years ago. This isn't a new struggle. So the reality is that we've always struggled with this. And you guys keep fighting, and you kept fighting, and God built something in you through that. And you experienced new relationships and new friendships, and those friendships aren't going to go away. I have full confidence that you're going to keep in touch with the people that you were close to here at the journey. Maybe not everybody, obviously, that never happens. But God will build, whatever He builds in you here, will carry you into the future. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is never judge or justify your faith journey through comparisons to other people. Redemption makes you uniquely new. So one of the biggest struggles I think in our faith is that, and some people are more prone to this than others, they might compare their faith journey to somebody else and be like, how did this person get here? They seem to have it all together. I see God seems to be blessing them. Why isn't He blessing me? And the thing is that you only see the surface on people. You only see what they allow you to see. And the reality is that redemption was never intended to make everybody the same. Redemption was intended to make you uniquely new in God's sight. And one of the things that, I'll be honest with you, there are times as a pastor that I struggle with is, seeing what we had here and being like, what is going on? Why can't we go to the next level? Comparing myself to some of the other pastors in the district or some of the other, conferences that I went to, and what can we do? Can we do this? And maybe this will work. Well, why did it? You go through that scenario as a pastor all the time, and it can't. If you allow it, and I've allowed it sometimes, I allow it to get away in my spirit, where, self-condemnation or not really seeing God clearly in some moments. Never judge or justify your faith journey based on somebody else's. God's story for you is unique. And He's redeeming you specifically for your story. So what I've also seen is that God has constantly reframed the journey story so we can gain wider perspectives of his narrative in our lives. Over the years, through your experience here, hopefully you've experienced a wider perspective of God through being in community here. Because there are so many things that you went through as a church that allowed you to see God in a different light. I mean, even just to pastoral change from Craig and the way he would pastor, the way that I pastored, to having tattoo parties in a church, to going out and ministering to people in the community, to all kinds of different things that God is. And the longer that we stay and we walk with God, hopefully, if we're honest, he's reframing our story. Because the reality is this: we as humans live a dominant story. No matter what we live a story that is dominant to us. So that dominant story involves your childhood, involves the way your parents raised you or didn't raise you, the number of, if you had, the type of home that you grew up in, if you had both parents present or one or both were absent, the type of, if you grew up in a faith community or not, everything that you live by is hardwired into you. And my opinion of the gospel, and my opinion of the way that the New Testament and the Old Testament is written, the way that God works in our lives, is that he's constantly trying to reframe that. Because the dominant story that we live is not necessarily the story that God wants us to live. He wants us to live his story. And sometimes that changes, and sometimes he wants you to change. And right now, he's asking us to change. We have no other choice. So now this is a new chapter in our story. And it'll probably involve a need for healing for a lot of you, which is tough because it's kind of ironic, right? A lot of you came here and received healing, and now church is closing, and now you're going to need healing from that. And I get that. I know I'm going to need it too. But know that the same God that brought you healing here will bring you healing elsewhere. And it might not be the same, it might not look the same, but this is the story that you can carry on your hearts, no matter what. I know that we're going to have a time of sharing at our last service, but I just want to open up just for a minute here and just say, how has the journey reframed your story? I know we don't have a lot of people that love to speak and share, but I'll just leave it open for a couple minutes if anybody wants to say anything about how the journey has reframed your story.
I know for me, a big part of my ministry started here. I went to school at PBU. This is where obviously I went for 4 years. I interned here, and my kind of view of ministry really developed here. Tim has been a huge mentor for me, and the way I see ministry, the way I see church now, and just the idea of kind of fellowship, but more so here, it was more of a more intimate fellowship. I mean, here the church is small, but the idea of what church should be like, you guys resembled that. Being here for 4 years, just the idea of supporting each other, the idea of loving each other, and lifting each other up. So for me, the journey was a huge part of where I am today as a pastor, and as one who has been called into ministry, and it started here. So.
Anybody else?
I got my first tattoo here.
Got his first tattoo.
It's actually, yes, I actually found out about this church. I remember being in school and we was around the cafeteria table and they're like, yo man, this church is giving out, people come back in with all these tattoos. And this church is giving out tattoos. Like, you got pay them, but it's like, tattoos everywhere. It's like, what you talking about, man? No church giving out a tattoo. It's like, I'm a journey, man, giving tattoos. So, Renee is excited. She loves tattoos. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll go check it out. I come in here and it's like full-blown artist I'm not used to a church like this. I'm not used to, no offense, white people, like a church filled with white people. And, like, it's just everything was just a complete switch. It was quieter. It was like more like introverted, laid back. And I'm used to like crazy, wild, young churches. So, I mean, I guess I got used to it basically. Became my first. Became a worship leader for the first time in my life here. Got married here, which is crazy. Still crazy. But yeah, man, this church supported me when my brother died too. It was just like, I have like tons and tons of memories here. And I've only been here for about like 3 years. And it's just been like, it's been fantastic being here. I mean, like, I've enjoyed it.
Little did you know when you got that tattoo that you become a worshiper.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was like my signature.
That's the initiation.
Yeah. So,
They only accept worship leaders as a tattoo. That's why we have to keep Brandon out. No tattoos.
The one thing that, well, there's lots of things that stick out to me, but the amount of investment like I could actually put into this church. You know, when the first week when I was like, you know, can I light those candles? You know, you're like, sure, you know, and then, you know, when I wanted to work on the grounds outside and stuff, like, cool, you know, go for it, you know, just let us know what you want to do. And, you know, you guys are very supportive, and I'm a little odd, but, you know, everybody just kind of made me and accepted me for who I am, and like, that's one of the biggest things that I love about the journey.
So I just want to close and say that the reason the journey exists today is because we believe that God provided us with a meaningful story to live out and invite people into. See, this story is much larger than this place. It's much larger than us. It's a story that we all have bought into because we believe that it transforms. And so the story continues. And the reality is that the human condition is that we put a lot of meaning in meaningless things. You know, we're just prone, like if we can find distractions and we put a lot of meaning in things that probably don't have a lot of meaning in the grand scope of things in life. And we can be distracted about those things. But the reality is that the thing that's so difficult about meaning and living a story that's full of meaning is that meaning is rather cumbersome. If you live out a meaningful life, it really screws up your life. I mean, there's no just sitting around. There's no just allowing life to happen to you. If you intentionally live out a story of meaning, it will mess up your life. It will make things messy. It'll extend you. And some of you know that because you've been living out a story of meaning here. You've been investing yourself and investing yourself and investing yourself. And you've seen people's lives change as a result of that. And maybe it's tough because I know you don't always see it. As a pastor, I know. I haven't always seen it. And I've struggled with that. But the reality is that change is much more incremental in life. And the sacrifice of a few people impacts many. And one of the things that Craig always has said about this church since he was the pastor here back beginning in 1998, I believe. He said, small church, big impact. And that is a legacy that you don't have to be ashamed about. There's no shame in that. At the end of the story, you know that when the story closes on January 25th, you can say that about this place. You can say that. And that's something that you can carry in your hearts and be proud of. And I never want you to lose that, because that's something I'm going to carry in my heart about you guys. And the question is that from this point out, will we choose to live that meaning from here on out? And there'll be, as you process this, I would say that this, after January 25th, it's going to feel much like a death to many of you. So the stages, if you don't know the stages of grieving, look that up. because that's really what it is. I mean, I'm sure after Wednesday night, you probably went through stages of waves of denial, you know, and you may still be in it. I know I am in a little bit. But know that in the midst of that, and the healing that you'll have to go through, and the processing that you'll go through, that God is building something for you that is built on this. And what you built on here is freaking amazing. Let's pray. Thank you, God, for the journey. I look at these faces, and I guess there's part of me that just wants to absorb it and never lose it, never have it fade from my memory as I look out in this congregation. So many people that mean so much to me and mean so much to each other. I thank you for the hard work that many of them put into this place. When it didn't seem like, there were times where it seemed the hope was not there, or the future seemed bleak, and still they pushed on because they believed in something bigger than themselves that will carry on long before these doors close. So God, thank you for redeeming us. Jesus, thank you for writing this story for us so that we can even have this place to be here. I mean, we're here because of you, not because of the journey necessarily. So Jesus, as we reflect, Holy Spirit, bring comfort and peace to us over the next couple of weeks. We need an overwhelming abundance of it right now. And may we continue to stand firm to the end. And may we carry on whatever you built in our hearts here, somewhere else, to our families, to our neighborhoods, to our workplaces, so that we can build a culture of grace and redemption and mercy where there is darkness. And sometimes that darkness is in our home, and sometimes that darkness is in our workplaces, and honestly, sometimes that darkness is in our churches. And so God, help us to wherever you are writing this next chapter of our story, may we choose meaning. May we not shrink back to it, because there's something about this that just hurts so deeply that we can't even imagine what life after this looks like. We can't imagine a world without the journey. But God, you've built something much larger in us, and help us to live that out and take comfort and refuge in that. And may these relationships that are forged here continue to produce that in each other's lives. May we even be more intentional than maybe we were because we had a place to gather. May this force us to be more intentional in each other's lives. We pray this in Jesus' name.
We're actually going to do Holy Fire first. Go back to that one.
Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you, and there's a
tough Sundays, God, but you're still awesome. So I just pray that you be with us, God, as we just go into the days of shutting down, God. But as Tim said before, God, we do have a story, and this isn't it as far as life, God. We continue on and continue walking with the journey in our hearts, God. Just everything that we learn here, that things that we've been through here, God, keep and just remember all the goodness that you've shown to us. So, thanks, God, and hope you have a good day. In Jesus' name.